Hello everyone. Today, we will be examining cephalopods of unusually large sizes. The subjects of this investigation being ASP4, ASP2-1, ASP2-2, and ASP6. This data exploration has a clearance level of 1. Legends of large cephalopods span millennia. The giant squid, known only in folklore until recently, the Kraken, a massive octopus said to take down entire seafaring vessels, the Lusca, a creature which lurks in blue holes, snatching any unlucky victims in an instant, with no blood, no signs of a struggle, and no trace. These beasts of the oceans are super predators, but what is the truth behind these legends? Is there an octopus as big as islands? Is there a mix between a shark and an octopus that they call the Lusca? Well, the answer to both is no, but the truth is still much more interesting and much larger than you would expect. Let's start off with the basis of large squids. ASP2-1 is the giant squid, ASP2-2 is the colossal squid, and ASP6 is the Magnapinna squid. These creatures are large due to abyssal gigantism, or as it is more commonly known, deep sea gigantism. This is essentially the property of deep sea creatures to grow to immense sizes due to a lack of sunlight reaching deeper parts of the ocean, which also creates temperatures that fall drastically. This leads to an increased cell size and an extended lifespan of organisms living in such conditions, which results in the continual growth of body size throughout their lives. These creatures also rely solely on food falling from the surface, and therefore create these efficient methods of existing, which will actually come up later. But how large can they be? Well, the Magnapinna squid is the least well known than any of the cephalopods we will be covering today. However, it has been recorded at 26 feet, or roughly 8 meters. Information on these creatures is sparse, so I will move to ASP2. ASP2 is the giant and colossal squid, but to find out just how giant and colossal they are, some deep research is required. To start, Dr. Charles Paxton of St. Andrews University in Scotland has used data to extrapolate a maximum height for the giant squid. He claimed it could grow up to 66 feet in length conservatively. After making this claim and defending it for a few years, he has been ridiculed by the scientific community. Then, some eyes were found. A sperm whale had its stomach examined and they found an eyeball of a giant squid that would have been 40 centimeters when it was alive. After translating some Hungarian text, I found the creature would be 66 feet in length, the exact size estimate proposed by Dr. Paxton. He was ridiculed for being exactly on the mark. Funny how that works. But what about colossal squid? They are different species after all. Well, another eye was found inside another sperm whale that was also 40 centimeters when alive. This all seems very coincidentally accurate, but these are verified claims by the scientific community. Sometimes estimates are accurate, or coincidences occur, but that is not a reason to discredit entirely, as seen by these verified finds. And these are just the specimens we have found. We have not been studying giant squid for very long and have few specimens, yet the ones we do have are of this size. Who knows what other monsters might lurk below? The giant squid was in fact purely folkloric, and many didn't even consider it credible enough to be a cryptid, only for it to be real with the first picture of one being in the 2000s. Speaking of which, let's move on to octopus. The Lusca is a creature which stalks blue holes, with the epicenter of reports being the Bahamas. A blue hole is a large marine cavern or sinkhole which is open to the surface and has developed in a bank or island composed of a carbonate bedrock. Labyrinths beneath them are believed to connect the holes, but less than 8% have been explored. Some are oceanic while others are inland, however through these caverns they may be connected. The show River Monster, as well as Bob Gymlan, have done an extensive look into these creatures and why they are most likely massive octopus. I will give a quick summary, however I will mainly focus on precedent for size. If you would like to learn more about these super predators, Bob's video will be linked in the description. The labyrinths beneath the blue holes could only be navigated by something that can squeeze through them, but is also powerful enough and has a hunting style to be able to pull down people without a struggle or the presence of any physical evidence like blood or tissue. The only known creature really capable of such an ability is the octopus, and it would have to be quite sizable to pull off these hunting maneuvers and the strength needed to pull a human down in an instant without resistance. Shark experts such as Dr. Gruber even claim that based on the nature of the attacks, this could not have been a shark. This creature must also have some level of stealth capability as it hunts in clear water without being noticed. It also takes quite a large amount of intelligence to pull off this sort of maneuver. This is an octopus. Again, I skipped over a bit of explanation, so for that, and an explanation as to why this pattern would be advantageous for the creature, go check out Bob's video or River Monster's episode titled Terror in Paradise. There was a corpse of the Lusca. An octopus corpse had washed upon the shore after being eaten by scavengers. Through what was left, it was determined that the creature would have been 25 to 30 feet in length when alive. This was a Caribbean reef octopus which normally grows to 3 pounds. This specimen was 300 pounds. So if giant Pacific octopus are 30 pounds, What does that mean for the possibility of growth within these creatures? A 3,000-pound octopus would be considered a kraken, but with this scaling, that is what the giant Pacific octopus would reach. As we have seen with the marine biologist from Australia, Dr. Paxton, analyzing currently known sizes and specimens, this type of extrapolation is typically correct. Even a creature a third of this size would be quite impressive, but aside from interpreting and extrapolating data, are there any large octopus specimens out there? Well, there is one that has been continually referenced. There is a 600-pound, 32-foot octopus that was caught off the shores of British Columbia. Some say that there's a 600-pound, 30-foot one as well. However, this is most likely rounding and is the same creature. This report can be found in an MFR paper called The Giant Pacific Octopus by William L. High from September of 1976. On the second page, it says, in the late 1950s, I interviewed a Canadian commercial diver, Jock McLean of Prince Rupert, BC. He reported capturing an immense creature weighing 600 pounds and measuring 32 feet from arm tip to top. McLean's photographs, unfortunately, were of poor quality. So this report is mainly based on estimations and shoddy photographs that can no longer be found. Yet this size has been referenced many times over and is even the current record holder that has been accepted into the Guinness Book of World Records. They certainly believe it, and all these sources do, although I wouldn't put it past a lot of these articles to skip the fact-checking phase. Octolab TV, National Geographic, Oceania, Guinness Book of World Records, and a scientific study. Some of these are more reputable than others, so it is hard to say. Let's go into that scientific study. It's called Sizing Ocean Giants, Patterns of Introspective Size Variation in Marine Megafauna. They mention the fact that these are only estimations and the specimen was never actually collected. They gave another specimen for a secondary example of large octopods that was caught in the same area. This one was verified and was 27 feet or 8.5 meters. They also cited that in Ileolaic Bay, Unalaska Island in the Aleutian, there was a 9.8 meter specimen which is actually the same size as the 32-foot specimen that is constantly referenced. They noted that these measurements are from half a century ago and therefore may not be entirely accurate. However, that is the only reason to discredit these two specimens. To me, this sets a precedent for octopus above 30 feet existing given that this many specimens of this size were collected. Unique environments such as the blue holes and the deep sea may also contribute to expanding this growth significantly. The corpse of the Lusca found matches these size ranges and would be large enough to get away with the hunting methods displayed by the Lusca, all but confirming what this mysterious cryptid actually is. Now let's take a look at the Kraken. What octopus we have already are big enough and powerful enough to be considered a Kraken based on our evidence here. However, I would still like to dive deeper into this piece of mythology and what truth lies behind it. The largest depiction of the Kraken appears in the book The Natural History of Norway from 1755. It states that on page 212 that the Kraken was a mile and a half in circumference. This is obviously the largest depiction for a reason. It is one of the most implausible from a biological standpoint. However, it is important to include our minimums and maximums in terms of the height of this legend. Other depictions stated that it was the size of a giant squid. So, the Kraken is a giant squid. Case closed, right? I'm sure a good chunk of these reports were in fact giant squid, however I believe there is another culprit. Given what we know about the Lusca, the consistently more octopus-like description of the Kraken, and some further evidence I will soon show you, the idea of it being a large octopus is plausible and even quite likely. I give you the St. Augustine Monster. The Colossal octopus is a species of octopus that can grow larger than 100 feet. This monster is supposed proof of this species. This incident occurred in 1896 in November. There were two boys on their bicycles going along a beach just south of St. Augustine, Florida. That's when they spotted a massive creature that was washed up by the tide. The one to eventually examine this corpse was Dr. DeWitt Webb, a local amateur naturalist. After his analysis, he determined it was a huge octopus. He estimated that the creature was over 40 feet long given the 23-foot tentacles in the 18-foot body. Measurements which he later measured again and determined it was larger. The find was then photographed and Webb contacted Yale professor Addison Verrill, who determined that when living it would have been 150 feet long. He came to the same conclusion of a colossal octopus based on the photographs. Verrill measured a much bigger height, putting the tentacles at roughly 75 to 100 feet in length and the body at roughly 25 feet. Altogether, when alive, and spread, and in a non-shriveled state, it could have even reached up to 200 feet. The most curious part of this whole case is that neither Verrill nor anyone else ended up going to examine the corpse, even though Verrill agreed with the conclusions. This was an important find that professors would be given praises and recognition for just examining it, and yet no one felt the need to go, and no one understood the importance except Webb. That's odd, and it is one of the aspects of this case that makes it so compelling. A sample of this tissue was sent to Verrill. This is the only part of the creature that remains today. Verrill believed the tissue to be blubber from a washed-up whale, and that the arms were not actually related. Dismissing the arms because it didn't fit his view was another odd move and does not really fit the scientific method. This discounting may be why Verrill did not go to see the creature in person. However, it should not have been enough to prevent him from examining it, as it is still possible that it is a very important find, so it is still odd that he didn't go. Forrest Wood, the director of Marine Studios, was able to get the Smithsonian to give some of the sample to Dr. Joseph Gennaro of the University of Florida. I read the entirety of Forrest G. Wood's description on their process, which solidified this case in my mind even more as being credible. He confirmed that this was indeed tissue that resembled an octopus and not any squid or whale, stating, "Now differences between the contemporary squid and octopus samples become very clear. In the octopus, broad bands of fibers passed across the plane of the tissue and were separated by equally broad bands arranged in a perpendicular direction. In the squid, there were narrower but also relatively broad bundles arranged in the plane of the section, separated by thin partitions of perpendicular fibers." Forrest Wood also mentioned that Verrill ignored the fact that the supposed blubber had very little oil and stated, "The very little oil is especially significant. The blubber that lies just beneath the skin of a whale is rich in oil, while cephalopods possess very little fatty tissue." Speaking of the whaleskin theory, someone by the name of F.A. Lucas, the curator of comparative anatomy at the U.S. National Museum, agreed with Verrill. However, his evidence was a little lackluster. He is quoted as saying, "The substance looks like blubber and smells like blubber, and it is blubber. Nothing more nor less." If looking at something and smelling it without any analysis of details and features or further scrutiny is the way we do science, then we would not be where we are today in biology. If dismissing tentacles as misidentified because you saw it and think it looks like something else based on a quick and subjective look, and quote, unable to refer this immense closed pouch-like mass to any part of any known whale, then we might as well be making up whatever we want to happen rather than what is happening. This is willful ignorance. Pure and simple. Webb also had something to say about the whaleskin theory, as he stated, "There was no caudal fin or any appearance as if there had been any. There was no pen to be found nor any evidence of any bony structure whatsoever. It is still in comparatively good state of preservation." Roy P. Mackle is a biologist with the University of Chicago. He confirmed Gennaro's findings that this was a cephalopod origin by analyzing amino acids and claiming octopus are one of the species with this composition. So with the analysis by Verrill and Gennaro's combined, it was the most likely candidate. Another scientist, specifically director of the Marine Sciences Laboratory of the Memorial University of Newfoundland and an authority on giant squids, Frederick A. Aldrich, stated, "Frankly, I would tend to favor a cephalopod identification of the material you mentioned, and per the articles you sent, cephalopod tissue, particularly squid tissue in my experience, is firm and does not easily decompose beyond a certain stage, and actually hardens and toughens upon exposure. This corpse lasted 3 months unchanged without evidence of decomposition." Even with the confirmation of this being a cephalopod tissue, a large portion of the scientific community discounts these findings for seemingly no reason other than it being outside their idea of what's within our realm of reality, despite the plausibility of this creature existing. There was a lot of back and forth with this. In 1995, some scientists published in the Biological Bulletin. They analyzed amino acids in the sample, which led them to believe it did not come from an invertebrate. They said it was probably whaleskin. Of course, other scientists disputed this too. There's an obvious hole in the whaleskin theory, being that it would be nearly impossible to remove the skin from a whale intact and get it to solidify into a 3-foot thick solid mass like this. Given that this study is in the minority of all studies and on-site work, it is hard to believe, but it will be included for posterity. So you might be asking, is this the only proof? How are we to believe the ridiculous claim that there's an octopus of this size living in the ocean when we only have seen one corpse that is controversial at best? Well, there are a few reasons an octopus could hide like this, and there are more sightings. Obviously, we could use the Kraken as proof of sightings, but is far too few in between, and has only been seen in Norwegian folklore from centuries ago. The first sighting of many that I will add is one that Forrest Wood actually acquired and looked into the credibility of. Forrest Wood tested the witness's knowledge and ability to recognize fish and marine life. He stated, "Before we set out each morning in his Nassau dinghy, I would tell Duke some of the kinds of fish that I wanted to find. Invariably, he would take me to a location. On going over the side with a face mask and flippers, I would find the species that he said would be there. His knowledge of local waters was no less impressive than the reliability of his information. Whatever Duke reports will be no hallucination or misidentification. With this level of knowledge and dedication, I don't see him really lying or making up stories either." This is what Forrest describes Duke as saying. "How big did giant scuttles grow?" I asked. Duke pointed to a small boathouse some 75 feet away. Said their arms would reach from our boat to that building. He offered additional giant scuttle lore. "They came into shallow waters only when sick or dying. They are dangerous to a fisherman only if they can hold fast to the bottom and at the same time reach a small boat floating above." Perhaps even a skeptical biologist would be forgiven for being impressed with this information. Anecdotal evidence is properly mistrusted, but the source must always be considered, and my informant had demonstrated his reliability in other matters. He had given me fairly precise data as to where, when, and by whom the giant scuttles have been encountered, and certainly, if they indeed exist, the account of their behavior was reasonable enough. Wood does a good job of analyzing credibility in a similar way to how I would. I believe this report of an 100-foot octopus adds a lot of credibility to the idea of these creatures' existence as a whole. But there have been reports of even more octopods of this size. The famous Bernard Heuvelman has done much work in the field of cryptozoology, and especially marine-related megafauna and marine-related strange creatures. He published a book called The Kraken and the Colossal Octopus. The section of the book we are interested in is not available online, but it describes on page 221 a study by his good friends in British Columbia. They created a scientific report by Paul H. LeBlanc and John R. Siebert titled Observations of Large Unidentified Marine Animals in British Columbia and Adjacent Waters. They discuss how Heuvelmans, the very author who referred this study, collected data. They state that while his efforts to gather cryptozoological sea creature data and sightings is truly remarkable, there may have been an easier way. Instead of searching through books and papers and the like, he could have sent out a notice in the paper and had people come to him. The Foundation has done both, so I suppose we are just the best. Anyways, they received many results from this method, and this particular method changes how we view the credibility of the reports. The specific report we are interested in comes from Port Simpson, BC from 1892. A Mr. Charles Dudeward relayed a story he had heard from grandfathers and many old people when he was a small boy. This is the story they had copied from him. In 1892, the Hudson Bay Company moved their post in that area from the Nass River to Port Simpson and employed many local indigenous people in the construction of the new post. 150 men in 50 canoes were towing in a large log boom more than 100 feet across when all of a sudden their tow stopped and seemed to pull back the 50 canoes against the current. After hours of strong paddling, the boom moved, but pulled heavy. At last, at dusk, they managed to beach the big raft at high tide. The following morning, at low tide, they found, underneath the boom of logs, a crushed octopus larger than the big raft. The arms showed on both sides of the raft. One arm reported to be more than 100 feet in length. Terminated in a big hook, the suckers on the tentacles were as big as basin plates to saucer size at the end. The corpse was later towed out to sea. Of course, the evidence was towed away into the ocean. Go figure. We can't have anything nice, can we? Another 30-meter octopus report. I can sense a pattern here. With now 3 reports, 2 of which were corpses, it is becoming more and more clear that there are octopods larger than 100 feet. With the analysis done on St. Augustine, credibility is fairly solid as well. Another famous case of a large octopus is the Tacoma Narrows Bridge octopus. Essentially, the Tacoma Narrows Bridge collapsed and created a vibrant marine ecosystem for wildlife in the water below. High currents and massive upwellings bring nutrient-rich water to the Narrows that allowed this marine ecosystem and reef to thrive. A new bridge was created that wouldn't collapse this time. Hopefully. The ecosystem was so successful that even octopods moved in, specifically giant Pacific octopods. They live all over Puget Sound, and this area is a hotspot due to the thriving ecosystem. There were reports over the span of 40 years of divers encountering a 30-foot-long Great Pacific octopus. After the evidence we reviewed, I don't doubt it, but it is still in contention to most. Most of the 30-foot octopus we received were giant Pacific octopus, but those such as St. Augustine may be an entirely new species, so giant Pacific octopus may still have their limits. There are plenty of Lusca reports as well. J.S. George of Nassau reported in 1872 that giant octopuses are known here, traditionally of immense size. This J.S. George is actually how I found the Kraken in the Colossal Octopus book, interestingly enough. Besides that, I found a good 10 reports that don't detail much more except generally octopus 30 to 60 feet in the Bahamas. There's a decently well-known one about a diver seeing a 50-foot one that stole his camera. There's one very interesting one, however. I saved the best for last, as this would be the same size as St. Augustine of 200 feet, although the credibility isn't perfect on that being the measured size. It is found in Discover the New Grand Bahamas, Better Homes and Gardens, Volume 35, Number 3, from March of 1957. It states, quote, "You hear tales of giant scuttles being seen in Bahamian waters, and Papa Tom tells of one that was reported to have a tentacle spread of 200 feet. It is said to have been seen between Hole-in-the-Wall Key in Nassau by men on the lumber boat from Grand Bahama. Papa Tom himself doubts the tale, although scuttles with 60 to 80-foot tentacle spreads have been reported in Bahamian waters in the past. This creates a precedent for 60 to 80-foot octopus in local waters, and while the 200-foot claim is shaky, it may be close to the size of St. Augustine and may be the same species. So, Could a creature like this hide this well to the point where, while there is a considerable amount of evidence, has a relatively low amount for a cryptid and has only this much? Well, let's examine the giant squid, which I believe gives some of the best proof of these creatures. Giant squid are aggressive, massive, and have little stealth capability, yet they were considered purely folkloric for the longest time. With the colossal squid, they make up 77% of a sperm whale's diet. You would think this means they're common, however we only have 12 corpses recovered in total, all from sperm whales, and the first one was found as recently as 1925. Given that we only have 12 corpses from a creature that supposedly is a large part of a common animal's diet and is only considered a real creature that is massive and obvious in the second quarter of the 20th century, then it makes it hard to believe that we'd easily be able to get any evidence of an octopus of the same size or larger. Even so, we have multiple sightings, corpses, and scientific analysis, which is pretty good considering how much trouble we had with the giant and colossal squid. As Forrest Wood stated, anatomical differences reflect different ways of life. The octopus is, with a few exceptions, a bottom dweller that feeds on bivalves and crustaceans. The streamlined squid is a swift and active swimmer that pursues fishes, capturing its prey by shooting out its two long sucker-bearing tentacles. This means octopus spend more time hiding at the bottom, while squid are active at the top, which also explains why they are more difficult to find, but equally likely to exist. Like we discussed with the Lusca and its labyrinth, octopods can squeeze into the smallest crevices, which aids their stealth capabilities. The octopus has possibly the best stealth in the animal kingdom. They use their chromatophores for black, red, and yellow, iridophores for reflecting light to create their metallic greens and blues, luciphores which reflect mainly white hues, and papilla to emulate texture. With all this combined, an octopus could easily go undetected. Given that these creatures are closer to bottom feeders than squid, they would most likely die and have their carcass stay at the bottom to be quickly eaten by deep-sea predators. Given that this size increase most likely comes from underwater caverns and abyssal gigantism, it is even more likely as humans have trouble exploring those areas of our oceans. We tried sending people into the blue hole labyrinths, but were unable to make it very far. There are, of course, always other reasons for creatures to go undetected. As is a quintessential part of this field of research, the quote men in black, if that's what you'd like to call them, are involved. What do giant squids and stealth submarines have in common? A lot, actually. A giant squid utilizes oxygen to completely negate the need for muscle movement, and ammonia drives the process. This is how that works. These creatures have ammonia in the muscular tissue for the purpose of enhanced buoyancy. Giant squid can float in the water without having to invest muscle power that way. Specifically, they use a coulemic cavity to store ammoniacal fluid that is then sequestered in either vacuoles in the active body tissue or in a gelatinous outer layer or some form of thermal plate. The giant squid has this stretched around its entire being since it is within the skin of the squid. It can pinpoint where the oxygen goes in its skin at an atomic level. It not only has buoyancy by pulling oxygen out of the water and concentrating it to its skin, it uses the ammonia ions to pull it to an atomic level to the point that it creates its own current through discharging all that oxygen, pushing the creature and removing the need for muscle movement. This system is extremely efficient. So how does this relate to stealth submarines and men in black shenanigans? Consider the perspective of world governments. Every potential to weaponize a resource is explored to its depths. Exhibit A, the stealth submarine. These subs converted the biological process of the squid into a technological one. Typical submarines will use ballast tanks. They essentially are akin to a fish's swim bladder, where they will fill up with a percentage of air and seawater. A problem occurs when they want to discharge seawater to go up as it creates noise. This means that when subs surface and discharge seawater, they become visible on radar. This new technology is called the fuel cell submarines and has been being developed for 5 decades. Like the giant squid, they distribute these fuel cells equidistant around the ship. These cells, get this, create oxygen which is then discharged to move the sub. The United States government couldn't let the enemy know their strategy, so they covered up a ton of information on the giant squid. The existence of giant squid was largely ignored, criticized, and all out denied until a very specific point in the late 90s, early 2000s. Suddenly, reports confirming the existence of giant squid were freely available, as if someone flipped a switch. This is no coincidence. As soon as their sub-technology became commonplace and known, this sudden influx of information appeared. What biological advantages might other cryptids have that could be kept hush until someone figures out how to weaponize them? So with the giant squid only having images of it released in 2006 as a non-stealth animal, and the carcass of the Lusca being 25 to 30 feet, yet going undetected for its entire lifespan, and we also have 3 specimens mentioned earlier that were 30 feet, adding to the idea that octopus can grow to this size and exist, it makes sense that something the size of Webb's estimates would exist. There is of course the number by the Yale professor of 150 feet, which I will not discount as he is likely far more qualified to make these sorts of measurements. However, he was not on site and this was the 1890s. But given the fact that there are more claims of octopus of this size and Forest Woods confirmations of this size range, this is certainly possible and plausible. Here's a clip from the end of a conversation with the Australian biologist who estimated the giant squid size originally and had his estimations confirmed.
To a satellite tracker, that kind of thing.
Oh no, yes, most definitely. We know very, very little about giant squid.
Are they clever?
Not as clever as octopus. Octopus are the geniuses of the cephalopod world.
Which is good, because I don't think I want anything 20 metres long being too clever, do you?
No, not at all.
It's almost an eerie foreshadowing of the terrors that lurk in the deep. It perfectly describes what makes these things so terrifying and powerful. So to conclude, do I believe there are 66 feet squid in the ocean? I think there could easily be 70-foot ones. Do I believe there are octopus over 30 feet? Yes, humans have more limited data on some creatures than we'd like to believe, and with a lot being discounted for seemingly no reason, as well as these specimens I showed, I certainly think these creatures exist. Do I think there's an octopus-shark hybrid living in underwater labyrinths? No, that is mainly just a name, like tiger shark or bull shark, not a hybrid. Do I think a 50 or 60 foot octopus exists? Well, if squid that size can exist and go undetected, then octopus certainly can, and this may be the conclusion as to what St. Augustine was. Do I believe that a 150 foot octopus exists? Again, this was the 1890s with limited samples. The estimates may have been off. However, even so, with the extra sightings, I now know that this is not only possible, but even plausible. Do I think there is an octopus the size of an island, a mile and a half out there? It would take a lot of convincing to get me there. The same amount to make me think that mannequins aren't evil. There's a quote that Forrest G. Wood had at the end of their investigation that is very relevant to our field of study. In light of discoveries within the past half century of sizable, if not spectacular animals, both terrestrial and aquatic, no biologist can safely affirm that all such creatures are known to science. Thank you for making it this far. Just for sticking around, I'm gonna tell you a secret. I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to subscribe and like to let me know you enjoyed it and to see more. Goodbye.